Good morning, all. This session is about the wildlife conservation and management, which is coming under Module 5. So let's see what wildlife is. Wildlife is actually, we always say something about the session is about wildlife. Wildlife, that is, which is living in the natural habitat. So wildlife refers to the uncultivated species of plants and animals living in their own natural habitat. That's important here. That is, they are living in their natural habitat and which is uncultivated, growing in its own natural condition. That's what is known as a wildlife. Wildlife include both plants and animals. Not only animals in this picture I've shown here. It includes both the plants, the animals, from the lower forms of animals to the higher levels of animals, birds, butterflies, insects, nematodes, worms, microbes, everything that comes under the wildlife. So, wildlife refers to the uncultivated species of plants and animals which live in their natural habitat. That is the most important term here, live in the natural habitat. Then there are many definitions for wildlife, like wildlife is life in any form that is plant or animal existing in its natural surroundings or natural habitat. Natural surrounding or natural habitat. That is, the natural condition is the most important term which comes under wildlife. Then, according to the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, this is important, that is the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which was introduced by Government of India in 1972, that is Wildlife Protection Act. The wildlife include any animals such as bees, butterflies, crustacea, fish, moth, aquatic, vegetation, all forms which live in water as well as on land in its natural habitat. That is the definition which is given by the Wildlife Protection, according to the Wildlife Protection Act. Then, wildlife management. What is wildlife management? Management means, actually the management means the term which is introduced by human beings only. Wildlife, if we nobody intrude into the wildlife, nothing will happen to it. They will exist happily in its form. Because man is living in association with these non-humans. Other than man, man has to exist with other living organisms in the world. So there comes the term wildlife management. Otherwise, there is no need of management or something. The animals will manage on their own. So wildlife management refers to the protection, preservation, perpetuation, and judicious control of populations of rare species of plants and animals. So wildlife management is actually done by the human beings. That is a judicious, or it is a very calculative preservation, protection, and perpetuation. That is the continuation of some animals which are under threat or which are very rare. That is known as wildlife management. And this wildlife is actually a renewable resource. Wildlife is a renewable resource. Why renewable? If you stop utilizing something, that will come again. A renewable resource means something which can be regenerated. For example, for many years, if you are killing a particular organism, for 10 years, total there were, just imagine that there are 100 number of a particular animal species A, and you are hunting that animal for food for 5 years, and there a decline came in the number of these animals. If you stop killing that animal again for another 10 years, the population of that animal will increase. That's what's known as a renewable resource. So wildlife, animal or plant, you cut a plant for long, it will decline, the number will decline. So if we stop or reduce the utilization of the wildlife resources, it will come again. That is why wildlife is a renewable resource. So the terms which you have to remember in wildlife is the natural habitat. All living forms existing in its natural habitat or natural surroundings is wildlife. Then Wildlife Protection Act was introduced in India in 1972, which gives protection or which is the protection, or there are some laws which comes under this, which aims to protect the animals which are under threat or which are under what which are under the threat by human beings, etc. And the wildlife is a renewable resource. So the aims of wildlife conservation. What are the aims of wildlife conservation? The aims of wildlife conservation is to maintain the balance of nature. That is what I said. It's a renewable resource. So there should always be a balance. So the aims of wildlife conservation is to maintain the balance of nature, to protect and preserve the rare animals, to prevent deforestation, to preserve the breeding stock, and to study the ecological relationships of plants and animals in their natural habitat. These are the aims of wildlife conservation. This is what I said. Management or wildlife conservation, the term came because of the coexistence of humans with the animals. So it is meant to maintain the balance of nature, to protect and preserve the rare species, to prevent deforestation, and to preserve or protect the breeding stock. Then to study the ecological relationships. Now, one by one, we'll see the significance of conservation. The significance of conservation are, wildlife is actually a precious gift of nature. It is actually a precious gift for nature generation, not only for the present generation, for all the coming generation. It has to be preserved or conserved. It has to be preserved. No overutilization should be there. So all living things from the smallest microbe to the highest organism has their fundamental right to exist. All small organism and all the creatures in this environment or in this world have their equal right to exist on earth along with humans itself. So the existence of man is actually the greatest threat for all the organisms from microbe to the higher animals, and all the organisms are interrelated and interdependent and interactive on nature. Let's see the advantages and benefits of the significance of the conservation. First is balance of nature. 2. Genetic resource. 3. Scientific values. 4. Economic significance and aesthetic and recreational values. First is balance of nature. We have learned in the previous sessions also the food chain. Balance of nature. Why we should conserve the wildlife for maintaining a balance. In an ecosystem, there is always a balance. See, in this picture, there is grass, grasshopper, mouse, owl, etc. There are different groups of different levels. The primary consumer, the secondary consumer, the tertiary consumer, etc. And what will happen if the mouse, or if at this level, if all the organisms become extinct, what will happen? There will not be enough food for the next group of organisms, or there will be overgrowth or population exploitation of the lower group of animals, and there will be a decline in the next trophic level because they don't get food. This is what is known as balance of nature. So conservation of wildlife helps in maintaining the ecological balance in nature, and it helps in maintaining a equilibrium and a very well established food chain and food web, the ecosystem. So that is what every creature has its importance. I told there should in ecosystem there should be plant, there should be grasshopper, there should be mouse, and there should be microbes too. Just imagine if there is no microbe in an ecosystem, the dead and decaying organism will not degrade. There will be a heap of dead bodies in an ecosystem. So there should be microbes also. The balance of nature is very, very, very important because each organism has its own role in the food chain and as well as food web. The microbe have, plants have, the primary or consumers have, the secondary consumers have, all these organisms have their own role. So the first and important significance of conservation of this is of significance of wildlife conservation is the balance of nature. Each organism has to be conserved. So then only you can establish a very well balance in food chain as well as food web. Hope you understood. If grasshopper, if just imagine if the mouse dies, once more I'll say if mouse, all the mice dies, what will happen? The grasshopper will not have any predator, so they will increase enormously in number. What will happen to owl? Because they are not getting enough food, their number will decrease. So if one organism is affected, several organisms will be affected. Then that is one example is that is this Mulanchaka and Nilgiri langur. We'll come to it later. Then next is genetic resource. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Genetic resource. The wildlife include a rich resource of genes of both flora and fauna, both the plants and animals. There are rich group of plants and animals with their genes, and they have a rich resource of genes. And this genetic resource, either it can be plant, it can be animals. With this genetic resource, we can do some breeding experiments in case of plants as well as animals. We are very much familiar with the experiments in plants, that is crossing the wildlife varieties with the crop yielding varieties. More yielding varieties will be crossed with the wild variety, and the most important advantage of doing that is to increase the viability of plants. Say, likewise, the interbreeding experiments are conducted between animals too to increase the because most of the wildlife varieties they will be resistant to most of the diseases. So genetic resource, the what wildlife has a rich resource of genes of plants, animals, etc., insects, different groups of plants, and that can be used in animal breeding experiments. The third one is scientific values. Scientific values are closely linked with the study of these animals, with the natural phenomena. And we, being the biology students, you all might have gone to some zoos, or you might have visited some places of ecological importance. Then you might have visited national parks, like that. So scientific values of wildlife are realized through the study of these animals. We have to closely observe the animals. For example, we are saying the Nilgiri langur eats this particular mullan chakka, a particular fruit which is available in that forest. How do you say that? Only when you closely observe that monkey, you will be able to say that these are the food which is eaten by that monkey. So that is close observation of these animals can be done by those people who are interested in studying their behavior, etc. Then, some of the examples of this scientific values are one common example, having a very important, which was very advantageous for the human being, was the human blood grouping, which was done on the basis of the rhesus monkeys. Rhesus monkeys. Then understanding the development of embryos with the help of sea urchins. Sea urchins are very good embryological models. Sea urchin as well as amphibians, newt are animals. Then for the genetic studies, Drosophila is used lot many organisms who are having identical similarity with the with humans are utilized in the experiments or scientific experiments, and that is the importance of scientific values. Hmm? So wildlife, the close association or the close studies of scientific aspects of animals help in the improvement of humans' livelihood too. The, that is the disease spread in populations when you studied about the carriers of certain diseases, etc. And coming to the economic importance, and usually the economic importance are which we get from the wildlife are of course the food, the food, rich source of honey you get from wildlife, then you get timber, firewood from wildlife. These are the important things which are utilized now also from this forest or wildlife. But certain other things which are considered to be having economic importance are not allowed to exploit in recent days, such as ivory, horns, and fur of animals. Then trading of these things are now not allowed at all. So the economic significance are you can take honey from forest, you can take timber, then firewood, etc. from the wildlife areas. Then the live and dead animals can be kept in zoos. That is another economic importance. So when you take an animal from a forest, you put it in a zoo, that zoo people, maybe the government, they can get money because people go to zoo to watch these animals. They can't see that in wild. A simple example is tiger. You take a tiger from forest, put in zoo. People will pay money to see tiger in the zoo. Hmm? Or dead animals. If you get any dead animal from the forest, you stuff it. You put in museums. Then people go there, watch these stuffed specimens, pay the money. That's a source of income. That is economic significance. So economic significance is firewood, timber, and animals in zoo, stuffed animals in museum, etc. Aesthetic and recreational values. Aesthetic and recreational values. That is, wildlife is very important in the is an important natural resource. I said all the wildlife means animals or plants are present in its natural condition or in natural habitat. So this wildlife is an important natural resource which is used to be cherished. But when you conserve these wildlife resources, what happens is people can go to certain place like this, and in the picture you can see animals in wild. For example, we have some places of this what tourism. Aesthetic and recreational values means simply tourism itself. Aesthetic and recreational values are tourism. Tourism comes under this. Tourism. We goes to places like Ponmudi, we go to Thekadi, we go to Nilgiri, we go to Silent Valley. So such places is actually these are places, Munnar, these are places where tourism is promoted for aesthetic as well as for the recreational value, so that you can watch the wildlife. Wildlife doesn't mean the animals only. Wildlife means the plants, the animals, the trees, the insects, everything. This is known as the aesthetic and recreational values. The wildlife is an important natural source of animals and plants. So, photography, you can go for tourism, you can go then for pleasure and happiness, and for field trips, you go to such places like Ponmudi examples, which we Ponmudi, Thekadi, Nilgiri, etc. Then so these are the significance of conservation. Wildlife has to be conserved because it provides a balance of nature, it provides a rich genetic resource, it provides scientific values, it provides it has economic significance, and it provides aesthetic and recreational values including tourism. So next we'll go to next subheading, that is extinct species. So when we talk about wildlife, we say about the extinct species. What is an extinct species? Extinct species means a taxon or an animal or a species is considered to be extinct when the last individual is dead. Not even a single individual exists on earth. That is known as extinct species. Extinct species, a species might have lived on earth years back, but not even a single animal exists now. That is known as extinct. Extinct means no more. No more animals are left. That is extinct species. So a taxon is extinct where there is no single and no where there is no single animal exists on earth, but you can see only these extinct animals in photographs like this. You can say this is an extinct animal, and these are the extinct animals like dinosaur is extinct, saber-toothed cat is extinct, dodo bird is extinct, woolly mammoth, passenger pigeon, Tasmanian, lot many extinct species are there. And these extinct species you can see only in museums as stuffed specimens or as pictures like this, because they no longer exist in wild or even in captivity. That is important. They exist, they no longer extinct either in wild or in zoos. They can see only the pictures or the models like this. This is known as extinct. Extinct means no more. Now, next is threatened species. Threatened species means the animals which are under threat, which are under threat is known as threatened species. The species which are facing a threat, that is known as threatened species. The species are facing a threat. If not properly conserved, they will vanish from the earth. That is known as threatened species. So if not protected, they will become extinct. Extinct means no more. So threatened species means if not protected, they will become extinct. And this extinct species will be very few, the threatened species will be very few in number, or they will be surviving in very less number in particular areas. Some threatened species will be endemic. Some threatened species will be endemic means what? And what is endemism? Organism is found only in a particular area and it is not found elsewhere. That is known as endemic. So it can be endemic or it can be spread in different areas. So threatened species are those organisms which are facing threat, maybe because of endemism. If an endemic species is there, if something happens to that habitat as a whole, that organism will vanish. Another condition is total in the world there is only 1,000 number of organisms. That is also facing a threat, because out of this 1,000, 50 will be in India, 50 will be in Africa, 50 will be in Iran, and 50 will be in Pakistan. Like that it will be spread. But gradually, if they are facing a threat, what will happen? They will become extinct. That is known as threatened species. For threatened species, there can be two groups. One, it can be endemic, or that means only 50 species in a particular area. It can be spread, that is 5,000 or 1,000 species in 50 regions. Both are actually facing threat itself. So the IUCN, that it's very important, usually this comes, IUCN as an exam point of view, this is important for you, International Union for Conservation of Nature, that is IUCN, has recognized the 4 categories of threatened species, and International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, is a membership union which is composed of government and civil society organization. Lot many organizations which are included, which are involved in the conservation activities are coming under IUCN. And there are many organizations which work together with IUCN for the conservation of nature and the natural resources, to protect it as well as to safeguard it. That is what is known as IUCN, or International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. So this IUCN has categorized the threatened species into different categories. IUCN has made different categories of threatened species. IUCN have categorized, made 4 categories of threatened species. They are endangered, rare, vulnerable, indeterminate species. We'll see one by one. So, threatened species are those species which are facing a threat, which are under the verge of extinction, and that is what that may be the exact sentence which you can use for the threatened species. Threatened species are those which are at the verge of extinction. So, first is endangered, 2 rare, 3 vulnerable, and 4 indeterminate species. We'll see one by one. The first one is endangered species. Endangered species. A species is considered to be endangered when the number is very less. Organism is considered to be endangered when its number is very few. That is what? Very few. It should be there. For example, all around in the world there is only 5,000 or 1,000 individuals left. That is known as endangered species. They are facing high threat and they are at the verge of extinction either in the wild condition. And examples of this endangered species, one of the common endangered species which we can see in this picture is lion-tailed macaque. This is lion-tailed macaque which is found in Silent Valley, and this lion-tailed macaque is actually used by people, or these are killed by people under the thought that this lion-tailed macaque is having some medicinal values. And actually this lion-tailed macaque they look similar to that of a Nilgiri lemur. Lion-tailed macaque looks similar to that of a Nilgiri lemur, another monkey. Its appearance is similar to Nilgiri lemur, another monkey, and among the tribal communities itself, and that Nilgiri lemur is having some medicinal values. And as because this lion-tailed macaque looks similar to that of a Nilgiri lemur, lion-tailed macaque is also exploited by humans, and these are killed, and so this lion-tailed macaque is also under the verge of extinction in the Silent Valley, the rainforest of southern India. And another animals are in this. You can see the tiger, the tiger, the blue whale, the Royal Bengal tiger, then the black-footed ferret are animals which are endangered. And this endangered animals, under the endangered animals, you also say critically endangered. Critically endangered. Critically endangered means which are more prone to extinction. Critically endangered and endangered. So, critically endangered species will be 100 in number. This is a small example. This is a hypothetical value I am putting. Endangered animals will be 1,000 in number. So, most critical group will be critically endangered animals. So, critically endangered animals include both critically endangered and endangered animals. And the critically endangered animals are like this. These are the critically endangered animals. That is the gorilla, the Sumatran tiger, the orangutan, the Amur leopard, the leatherback turtle, hawk-billed turtle, Javan rhino. This just learn at least a minimum of 2 for the exam point of view. These are the critically endangered animals, and these are the endangered animals. Critically means they are more critical to become extinct. extinct. If not conserved, they will become extinct very fast. Now, that's all about the endangered animals. So, endangered animals are those animals which are very few in number and they are at the verge of extinction. That is important. They endangered animals are those animals which are at the verge of extinction, which are under the verge of extinction. Example, lion-tailed macaque, then this tiger, etc. Now, next is rare species. Rare species are those species whose number is very few. Rare means they are next step. If not conserved, they will become endangered in the near future. Rare species are those group of organisms or plants. If not conserved, they will become endangered in the near future. That is known as a rare species. The number will be very less in number, and usually these rare species animals, they are more susceptible to become endangered because they are endemic. Endemic means they are living in a particular area. Endemic species means those species which live in a particular habitat only. That is known as endemism. Endemism is, and this rare species are usually, most of the rare species will be endemic species. So if some overexploitation happens to this area, for this habitat, that area, that organism will become extinct or they may become endangered. That is known as rare. They will quickly disappear if not conserved, or they will become endangered if not properly conserved. Examples are, one example I've shown in this picture is the great Indian bustard, and the concept of endemism was first put forward by Condor. And when a species is found in a particular geographical area and they are isolated from other regions due to certain social and climatic conditions, it is said to be endemic. A good example of endemism is an island. Just imagine an island, a small island which is surrounded by water. That means it is separated from other regions. So, in some species which is found there will not be found in any other part. That is known as endemism. Geographically also they will be isolated. And the examples of rare species are great Indian bustard. You see, this is, and this I have shown here in this, the decline in the number of these birds. In 2020, almost 90% of population has stopped, and people hunt these birds for food. And this scale shows the decline in its number. Almost 90% of the population is vanished because of the over exploitation of human beings. See, in this 2020, the number is declining, and so in the near future they will become endangered, and a little bit later they may become extinct if not properly conserved. So Wildlife Act also will it is they will actually, it's enacted to prevent or people from exploiting these birds. Great Indian bustard. Ardiotis nigriceps is the bird, and another example is Hawaiian monk seal, that is Monachus. And next is vulnerable species. So rare species will become endangered if not properly conserved. Next is vulnerable species. Vulnerable species, they are also called depleted species. Vulnerable species is also called depleted species. Vulnerable is also depleted species. These are the species which are not critically endangered but facing a high risk of extinction in the world. Their numbers is reduced. So vulnerable species means they're actually not critically endangered but their number is less. If not properly conserved, they will become extinct. That means they are now, and you have enough number of these animals on the in the wild, and they may become endangered if not properly conserved. Examples are dugong, great white shark, red panda. Not only these animals are considered to be vulnerable species, there are lot many species which are listed under endangered as well as vulnerable too. So dugong, shark, whale shark, polar bear, dolphin, red panda, etc. are examples of vulnerable species. Vulnerable species are those species which are depleted species and they will become endangered if not properly conserved. That is vulnerable species. Then next is indeterminate species. Indeterminate species are those species which are considered to be in danger but not enough status or details about that animals is known. That is known as indeterminate species. Some animals may be facing threat but we don't have enough information of the number. Such examples are three-banded armadillo, then the prairie dog are examples of indeterminate species. Now let's see. So with this, one part is over. We learned about IUCN, important, that is International Union for the Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. And in the conservation context, IUCN has categorized the endangered, the threatened species, both plants and animals, into different categories like the endangered species, rare species, vulnerable species, and indeterminate species. Then, next is we'll see what are the causes of extinction one by one. The causes of extinction. Extinction means no more animal is left on this planet, on the earth. That is known as extinction. The, the examples we have shown in the previous slides, one saber-tooth the tiger, then we showed the dinosaur, the dodo. Many animals have become extinct, and extinction is actually a natural process of evolution. Extinction is not that much, but to some extent, if a group of organisms cannot survive on nature, extinction is a natural phenomena itself. Extinction is a natural process. Extinction is a natural process, and which is important to understand that organism. And this based on the natural process, the animals which became extinct were, one is dinosaur, another one is saber-tooth tiger, brontosaurus, etc. They became extinct because of this natural reasons. Then endangerment is a broad issue which involves, actually extinction is a natural process. We all are aware about the dinosaur become extinct because of the non-availability of food or because of a meteorite impact. These two are natural. There is no man-made causes and they are natural. But endangerment means an animal will become endangered because by the activity of humans. And actually these are the causes of this extinction and endangerment. If endangerment is more, that will lead to extinction. So we include the causes of endangerment and extinction under the common title causes of extinction. So the different factors are, one is habitat destruction or habitat loss. The first one, habitat destruction. Habitat destruction means because of the increase in population, people will encroach into the wild area for construction purposes, for utilization of wood or timber, etc. And as a result, the habitat will become destructed or fragmented. That is the primary cause or the first cause of extinction. Like gradually, people will encroach the wild area or the forest area for the purpose of construction, maybe houses or maybe some industries, and also for and fragmentation of habitat. Inside a habitat, we'll go into the wild or into the wild and construct some what resort somewhere or something like that, and that will lead to the fragmentation or a loss of habitat. Means what? Animals which are living there will move to some other place because their habitat is lost. And this habitat destruction is one of the strongest forces for extinction and endangerment. This is caused by, of course, human being itself. And the second one is hunting for economic purpose. Earlier I told for economic purpose, for making money, people will kill elephant to take ivory. You will take kill tiger for taking fur, etc. And these are hunting for economic purpose. And this economic purpose, if you are hunting like this, you then for selling flesh also you hunt animals for taking their horns, that will lead to extinction. Then the third is over exploitation. Over exploitation means there is, this is what we say, nature, there is always enough for man's need, not for his greed. Nature provides everything for your need, but not for your greed. And overexploitation happens as a result of greed. See, always the mother nature provides everything for your need. Nature provides everything for your need, but the greed, but we are greed. Man is greed, and this greedy man will exploit more. Nature gives everything for your need, but not for your greed. And this greed will result in over exploitation. And as a result of over exploitation, maybe for food, maybe for timber, maybe for construction, what happens? You need a house to live in. Actually, maybe you need this much area, but rather than that, we'll see when a person start constructing his house, why can't I extend my boundary so that I will get more space? And that is what is known as greed. That will lead to overexploitation. Or else, today I need only one rabbit or one goat to one, not one goat is more than enough. One goat for 5 days or like that. But we kill more number and start preserving like that. That will lead to the that will affect the number of the organisms. That has declined in the number of organisms, maybe the fishes, like we all are aware of such things nowadays. Because of this lockdown and this pandemic, many animals were very happy, right? Because there was no tourism, because there was no fishing, many animals survived to its fullest during this pandemic because men were locked in his houses. Other times what happened, men were there in the field and in the wild and on the sea. So that will led to the over exploitation. But now exploitation, sorry. But now what happened? All are in the, we are locked in house. So the animals are very happy. You might have seen some videos in which animals are walking happily on the road, etc. And recently a news came, Ponmudi, even though tourism was about to open, the roads are having cracked. So you are not supposed to go for tourism to Ponmudi. Then also the animals will be very happy. And the lushy growth of plants you can see now everywhere. That is over exploitation will lead to the reduction in the number of organisms. Then another reason is the purpose of scientific research and zoo collection. So for the purpose of scientific research means, for example, if you need to take the photograph of a single organism, like you need to take the wings or something like that, you will collect them in enormous number. You will become greed. Rather than collecting one, we will collect more than one. That is the purpose of scientific research and for collection in zoo. For in zoo, one pair or two pair is enough. If you collect more and plan to sell to other zoos, that will result in the decline in the number. Then control of pests and predators. If the I said earlier, if there is no proper balance in the food chain, if there is increase in predators, that will affect the animals in the lower trophic levels. Then sixth one is pollution. That is very important. Pollution, and nowadays the pollution is reduced. As I said, humans are locked in houses. Pollution will lead to a decline, or it is a threat for plants and animals, like the vehicle pollution and the industrial pollution, pesticide pollution, etc. Then another one is introduction of exotic species. That is very, very dangerous. Exotic species means you are introducing, for example, in Velayani. This is happening there. In Velayani, you have a group of fishes which are what found there. They are the natural inhabitants. We say they are the original ones which are found in Velayani Lake. There are many group of fishes which are the natural inhabitants of Velayani Lake. But now what we do for that is what? That because of this intrusion or intervention of human beings will introduce the exotic species of fishes. Exotic species means what? You are introduced some organism which is found in another place is introduced in a new area. For example, if you are introducing a fish from what you are introducing a fish from Gujarat to the Velayani Lake, or you are introducing a fish from Pakistan to Velayani Lake, introducing a fish from Africa to Velayani Lake, that is known as exotic species. What happens to this exotic species? Some exotic species, when you introduce, it will die off. But some exotic species, when introduced, because it's a new habitat for them, they will increase in number enormously. And this is happening in Velayani Lake also. That is actually a issue which is happening there. Velayani Lake, the natural inhabitant fishes are now vanishing from that lake because of the introduction of fishes like carp, tilapia, many fishes are introduced. For what they are introduced by humans for rearing, for fish farming, that will lead to the extinction of other animals. That is known as introduction of exotic species. If you introduce some exotic species, and many exotic species, one example is Lantana camera. Lantana camera, the plant which is now found in wild as well as garden, is an exotic species. But now see, we can't control it. It is growing like a weed. Lantana species, that is puchedi, the small plant. Lantana is an exotic species, and can't even we put many some part of the plant in fire also, we can't destruct that. It is growing like wild, very wild. That is an exotic species. So Lantana, when you look at it, lot many flowers are there like that. But now in many forest area, this Lantana has covered major portion, and the natural plants in that region are now vanished. That is, introduction of exotic species is really a threat to the organism which are found there naturally. Introduction of exotic species will kill the plants as well as animals. I said in Velayani Lake you are introducing carp, tilapia and all. That will affect the natural fishes there, natural inhabitant fishes there. Another example of this plant, Lantana camera, that is the Puchedi, Lantana camera, that has led to the decline in their growing wild. People are happy to take pictures and all because they produce colorful flowers, but they are actually a threat to the natural, the original plants there. The, that is, foreign species will lead to the extinction and endangerment of organisms. Then the next is climate change, of course. Climate change is now the climate we say, and the previous years and the 2 years time, in the past 2 years, we had different types of climate. Like we had a flood, then we had a drought, like again we had a flood, and things like that, and ice fall is happening in some region. Totally a global climate change has happened, and that climate change may be partly due to the pollution, and of course is due to the action or activity of human beings like deforestation, things like that. Deforestation and this pollution has led to the climate change, and as a result of this, the season has changed. And this seasonal change, what will happen? You might have learned, we might have heard that farmers are waiting for the harvest. So harvest means, as per the previous information the farmers are having, they plant their crops and they will wait for the harvest. And at that month, suddenly a flood will come. Whole plant will be destroyed, and that is known as climate. That is the impact of climate change. And not, I'm talking about the agriculture, but in wild also the same thing happens in case of the plants which are about to pollinate will be lost, because so the some plants will may pollinate by water resources, or some plant will be pollinated by bees, and if there is a change in climate, that will affect the organism, and that organism's depletion will affect the pollination of plants. Then that uh, reduced pollination will lead to the decline in the number of a particular plant. That is known as that is the impact of climate change. The next is natural calamities. Natural calamities is actually, it is a part of nature itself. That in nature itself, the forest fire, which is not man-made, it is a natural calamity itself. There may be a forest fire that may lead to the will clear a plant in one part, but later a new saplings will come. That is what is known as natural calamity. Or there may be flood, there may be what you can say, there is flood, there may be drought, there may be this volcanic eruption. There are many natural calamities like that will lead to the extinction of the animals. And this dinosaurs, one reason for the extinction of dinosaurs, scientists say, is the impact of a meteorite. That is natural calamities. So these are the causes of extinction or endangerment of organisms. One, destruction of habitat or loss and fragmentation of habitat. Two, hunting for economic purposes like food and shelter. Then overexploitation, that is next, is for the purpose of scientific research and zoo collection. Then control of pests and predators. Then the pollution, introduction of exotic species, climate change, natural calamities, etc. So with this I conclude today's session, which was about the wildlife conservation and management. Thank you.